Yeah, boy. What's happening out there? Robert Phoenix, broadcast to you live from Austin, Texas on the 29th of January. Just 2 days away from that big full moon. The big blue, red. Maybe this full moon has some symbolism. It's a blue moon and it's a red moon. Maybe it's a full moon that we can come together on. What do you think? It's the come together moon. Ha. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? Dun, 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 dun. Hey, sorry I'm late today. The file processing was taking longer than I thought it would because I have an interview to play today. It's going to be a long show. So, yeah, it's more than 15 minutes, more than a half an hour, but it's worth it. It's going to be me and Shonagh Home, who is a dear friend and a really smart and switched on person. And she's got a lot to say, and she's an author of multiple books. We talk about some of them on the show, and we're in the interview, so we get into a lot of different topics. It's a great conversation, and I'm actually going to put the interview on YouTube because I made it started off as a video, and I turned it into audio. So for you guys, this is what I do. This is what I do for you. So you're going to hear that today, and boy, but it is a big news day. It almost feels like, oh, boy, I could do a 2-hour show easily today with Shana and some of the other stuff that's going on with the Grammys last night. There's new things that are emerging from the Las Vegas event. Stephen Paddock was reassigned his room in a different wing. So he requested a room in a different wing, but was reassigned by the hotel to room 32135. And apparently the FBI was spotted in that room after the shooting. Hello? What else do we have here? There's a lot of stuff going on, man. A lot of stuff. China's army recruits top scientists to develop quantum technology and AI. China is putting the moves on. You know, so it's like China is like pushing all in now. They're waiting, just holding their cards. They're waiting just to amass a certain amount of money, make sure all their people are in their hive mind, so none of the only children grow up greedy and expectant over what they don't have, which is theoretically freedom. It's a free-range society. The range is a bit smaller than our free range. All societies are free-range societies, by the way. So we got that going on. China going all in. What else do we have? I'm gonna have Emily on tomorrow. Emily Moyer. We connected yesterday. We talked about this thing in Michigan State and Larry Nassar. And it was a pretty intense conversation. She's got a lot to say, and I'm going to try to get her to breathe a little bit because Emily is a very enthusiastic communicator. We know this. But I think yesterday when I was talking with her, wasn't just enthusiastic. You could tell she was really troubled by what was going on. So we're going to try to have some deep breaths and try to tap into her knowledge base about U.S. gymnastics and where the center of the perpetration likely took place, which is at Caroli Ranch in Bella Caroli and his wife. And we're going to try to turn a few stones over there. So I'm going to hook up with her tonight. I'll play that interview tomorrow. So, hey, we're in Aquarius. So I'm sharing the stage. I am sharing the spotlight on the show. If you want to learn more about the upcoming eclipse, check out the Pixelated Max Headroom live stream from last night. God, I don't know what to do about this Google Live, YouTube Live thing. It is just hit and miss. I mean, sometimes it's fun, and other times the pixelation is just hardcore. So I'm going to try some different solutions. I'm going to jack in directly to my router, see if I get a better signal. And if that doesn't work, I'm just going to have to get a different computer. All right. Well, why don't we just get right into it? Let's just get right into it. Oh, here's another headline. Uh-oh, here we go. Clinton, Podesta, and others in Senate crosshairs over dossier, given 2 weeks to respond. Let's see how that goes. Trump ignores DOJ warning, notifies Sessions he wants FISA memo released. Well, Trump's fighting for his life. Of course he does. Cherokee woman blasts fake Indian. Elizabeth Warren. How can anybody take Elizabeth Warren seriously? I have no idea. Indian or not, this woman is a fruit. She's a nutcase. I'm sorry. I've seen her. I've read her energy. She's highly unstable. It's a highly unstable person, and he'll do anything to stay elected. I'm sorry. It's just the truth. It's the absolute truth. And we had the Grammys last night. I didn't tune in because I was doing a show, getting ready for a show. I guess I could look at it. I've lost a lot of, it's like, I've lost some of the steam around looking into the symbolism of these lurid and tepid events. It's like I could, and it's probably interesting. Oh yeah, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. And I mean, when you look at the last Super Bowl that we had, actually it was, it was 2 Super Bowls ago. It was 2 years ago when Beyonce was out there rocking the Black Panthers Matter halftime show. There was a lot in that, and that was really worth unpacking. But I actually am now enjoying the sanctity of my mind a bit more without having to completely help them with the revelation of their method. There's plenty of people out there, and I'll still do it, don't get me wrong, but there are plenty of people out there that can help them with the revelation of their method. And for whatever purpose or reason. Okay, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to play this interview with myself and Shana from yesterday. So sit back, enjoy it. It's going to be about a 45-minute interview, 50-minute interview, and I think you'll dig it. She has a lot to say. It's a good conversation. And I'll have her on once a month on every Monday. And the next conversation will be probably shorter, maybe about 25 to 30 minutes max. So we can keep this thing kind of in the realm of brevity. But it's really a good episode to start off with her, so you get some background with her. And then we can move forward and just get into things like solutions, which is what I'm dedicating 2018 to, which is what the Friday show is about. So without further ado, here is myself and Shonagh Home from yesterday. And I'll be back to wrap up the interview after the interview is over. So sit back, have another cup of coffee or tea or kombucha or whatever it is you're taking in and imbibing this morning. And I'll see you at the end of the interview. All right, so I am really, really happy to introduce Shonagh Home, and Shana is a very good friend, and I guess we're kind of cadres and the brothers and sisters in the same service of God in our own way, and it's really, really great to connect with you. And we've done a lot of stuff sort of offline. And I've had you on my other show as a guest talking about your book. And I got this idea that I wanted to have you on as a regular guest on the first Monday of every month, because I wanted to sort of tap into kind of a different pool of wisdom and your knowledge base. And I thought that you and I could have some really interesting conversations. So this is our first conversation, and welcome, Shana.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert. I'm honored.
Well, so you and I connected through Love and Spirit Medicine, which was not your first book. It was the first book that I was aware of that you had done. And I got it in the mail, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I totally connected with your journey, which to me was almost like you're like the female version of Terence McKenna. And I thought, in a good way, right? I mean, it's like, man, this woman has guts, because it's about your dissolution of a couple of key relationships in your life and discovering the powers of plant medicine and really diving in head first and deeply, while falling in love at the same time and having that as part of the process as well. I still would really hope that somebody out there would have the guts to make this into a movie, because it would be, I think, an incredible movie.
Oh,
it would be like Eat, Love, Pray meets Altered States. That's what I think.
Eat, Love, Pray. You mean Eat, Pray, Love?
Eat, Pray, Love. Right. Eat, Love, Pray. Eat, Pray, Love meets Altered States. That would be an amazing sort of combo. But anyway, that's the book that I connected in with you on, and we had a great interview that first time.
Yeah.
And we've had a really strong connection since then. And why don't you tell folks about your other books and your work in general, so they get a big marquee view of who you are.
Okay. Well, the book before Love and Spirit Medicine is titled Ixchel Wisdom, 7 Teachings from the Mayan Sacred Feminine. And that came from my work in the Yucatan. I worked with a lovely shaman teacher there, Miguel Angel Vergara, and a very humble, good guy. And so I'd experienced what a shaman there gave me a Mayan baptism. And that was in that baptism, he introduced me to the Mayan goddess Ixchel. And then I became very close with her. And so that book was writing down a series of messages that I received from her. And it's a very sweet little book, and it's like a love letter to women. And that book continues to sell. It's just in ebook form right now off my website. It's really a sweet book. And then I wrote Love and Spirit Medicine. And then after Love and Spirit Medicine came Poetic Whispers from the Green Realms. And that is a series of poems that came to me as a result of my deep work with the mushroom. And in the Mazatec tradition, it's understood that it's the job of the shaman or the curandera to be the voice of the mushroom. Not that I think it's my job to be the voice of the mushroom, but this beautiful poetry just flows through me when I am working with that.
Oh, I've read it. It's pretty amazing stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And it comes now without the mushroom. So there's that beautiful book. And then there's Honeybee Wisdom, A Modern Melissa Speaks. And I think I was like possessed like a couple of years ago by the muse. And I researched like crazy. And I wrote this book. And it's not how to beekeep, but it's going into the issues with bees, and then what are some of the solutions. And I speak to biodynamic farming and Rudolf Steiner and that kind of thing. So those are all available on my website, and they're in ebook form right now. So that's that. And then my work is I work as a therapist, essentially. I call myself a shamanic therapist because I bring in the shamanic arts to whatever degree to my sessions. So I do one-on-one sessions with people, and I work with people all over the world, really, through Skype or maybe Zoom eventually, as we were discussing earlier. And then I do one-on-one retreats, and that's very unusual. There's not a whole lot of people, anyone that I know, like offering that kind of thing where my client comes to my home and they stay with me in my home, which is a little cottage on a horse farm, all tucked away just outside of Seattle. And they arrive on a Sunday afternoon. They stay till Friday morning. And it is very deep psycho-spiritual work. And they do shamanic journey and deep soul conversation. It is totally catered to whatever's going on with them, so that each retreat is as unique as the person who comes to work with me. And that feels like my heart's work, like my life's work, like everything I've been doing thus far has been a kind of training to bring me to this point. And I do a lot of those. I've been quite booked with that. I had a very busy year last year. And, yeah.
Well, that sounds really unique. Instead of having 50 or 60 people that you're working with, just one super intensively. That sounds great. That sounds really awesome. I wanted to ask you about, this is just a personal question, because I think you have really a high degree of credibility. Like, you've gone in, you've dealt with your shadow in a really big way and loss, and you've faced some things that a lot of people don't face. So that alone, to me, speaks to your credibility, and you've done this repeatedly, no stone left unturned. So when you talk about shamanism, you are really embodying that work. And a lot of people would look at you and say, "Oh, well, she looks like a soccer mom to some degree, right?"
Uh-huh.
And yet there is clearly, a very, very highly developed process and experience that you've gone through, that you've integrated into your life, which is great, because a lot of people call themselves shamans, and they, it's just one of the things about our society. I think it's really funny, because they'll call themselves shamans, and they haven't done the work. They haven't looked at the shadow. They've taken a few seminars, a few webinars, and all of a sudden they think they kind of know what they're doing, and that's really fairly dangerous. But that's not really what I wanted to go with this. What I wanted to go with is that you're also a mother, and I've got my own version of my work, and I'm a father, and it's a really kind of different, strange role to be cast in, and raising children and interfacing with things like schools and other parents and culture. And I know that you and I are not alone in this, that there are other people out there. I wanted you to just kind of get into this and speak to it, and what your experience is like, and maybe some of the challenges you faced, and how you've met and reconciled some of those challenges.
As a mom?
As a mom and a practitioner, the two of them together, yeah.
Well, it's interesting, because I do feel, I began my work with first of all, when I hit around 40, that's when I had my kind of awakening. I call it the midlife face slap. And I started exploring far more deeply and asking the deeper questions. And then I came into the shamanic exploration really very organically, and it felt like coming home. And by the way, we're using that word shamanism so people understand what we're talking about, but I really think of myself as a medicine woman, and I'm Scottish Irish, and let me tell you, I mean, the European people, there's deep shamanic roots in Europe. I mean, it's everywhere. And so but then almost 7 years ago, that was when the mushroom was calling me. And as a result of all of that deep exploration, that has made me a better mom. I know it has, because there'd be that last part of the mushroom experience where it was like this sort of quiet conversation within myself, where this, the voice of conscience, if you will, would be like, you could have couched that a little differently, or, she's feeling this and you were over here busy with it, and I would come out of that and then I would make it right.
Oh, nice.
And so, it for me, my goodness, it's made me a better woman. It's made me a better mother in so many ways. And then my girls have had an unusual upbringing in that they've been exposed to things that maybe, other kids haven't. And for 4 years, I held monthly full moon ceremonies, and I'd have upwards of 30 women show up, but it was nice for my girls to see women coming together, not to gossip and whatever, but to, come together in a different way and create something really beautiful together. And so anyway, but then, so both my girls, thanks to their father, they go to a private school, actually live right next to it. And I'm definitely an outlier. And I've been an outlier my entire life. And right. I, in high school, tried so hard, and I would dress like that certain group and try to act like that. Like, when you're a kid, you want to be in the tribe.
You want to be accepted, sure.
And which is, of course, what all the advertisers are fully aware of, and social engineers, and they play our kids to the hilt with all of that. But in any case, I really, and I'm so glad looking back that I tried as hard as I did, because it was to no avail.
I didn't try that hard.
I really, oh my God, I so wanted to fit in and have a tribe, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
Which was really painful. But looking back, I see how that really protected me in a way, because then I didn't fully fall under this spell. I was under the spell to a degree. I think we all were.
Yeah.
easier for that to break.
Even when you think you're breaking out, you're still under the spell.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, rebellion, revolution, all that stuff, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's almost like it's this automatic rite of passage that kind of gets diverted, right? You know, because there's the astrological aspect of the Saturn opposition. You want to break away from the father. You want to break away from the dominant culture.
Right.
And there are people waiting there. There are forces waiting there. Hey, we got something for you. Come on over here. Right?
Right.
You know, back in the 70s, it was, it was rock and roll and drugs and all that stuff. And now it seems to be, oh, well, you know, you want to break away. We've got about 90 definitions of what your sexuality can be. Come on over here. You want to explore something different. You want to break away from the dominant paradigm, dominant culture. You're not even sure why. Well, how about this? There you go. So this happens generationally all the time. Gatekeepers are just waiting there to divert the attention, divert the energy, and then indoctrinate into whatever program that they have set up at that time. And so for you and I, who are contemporaries, it was sex, drugs, rock and roll.
That's right.
1960s, 1970s, all that stuff.
Madonna. We had Madonna.
Satanistic, Luciferic. And then Madonna comes in and brings the new version of the liberated woman, right? She's the new version of the liberated woman.
Oh, yeah, and Sex in the City also. I remember, first of all, I saw Madonna perform at some like little dumpy place because I lived in New York City in the East Village, you know. Right. And I remember thinking, she sang Lucky Star, and I was like, wow, that chick is going to be famous. I just could tell. Like, she's got something. But, yeah, it was like sort of trashy, sexy, free spirit, but I don't know, kind of a twisted version looking back, I think. And then Sex and the City came on, and I remember a friend of mine calling me going, because I didn't watch TV. I've never been like a TV watcher. I would sort of watch a popular program, and that's what they're called. And then I'd sort of forget because I was too busy living my life. But anyway, someone called and said, oh my God, you got to watch this show. These women, they talk like us. And I was like, what? She said, yeah, it's called Sex in the City. And God, looking back now at that, I see that was pure programming. And so that women would think that they could screw anyone.
That's right.
And dress anyhow. And they were somehow put them in a place of power. And, you know, I fell for that like we all did. Like you said, that was our programming. Right.
And then Sex in the City was created by Darren Star, who also created Beverly Hills 90210 and Melrose Place. And of course, Darren Star is a, cut and paste, cliche, gay Hollywood writer and producer. And so you have this gay man, right, coming in and basically creating these 4 different versions of women. Because there was somebody in Sex in the City that every woman could relate to, right?
Exactly.
Like if you couldn't relate to Carrie Bradshaw, you could certainly relate to any one of the other characters. So they're going to get you 4 different ways.
Right.
And then take you through the journey and then open you up, and then you'd see all these different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
Until finally, Melinda, whoever, she winds up being the single mom with a child, and I think she even becomes like gay or something herself. That happens. But yeah, again, I mean, that's total social programming.
Yes.
In a big way. And, but that comes a little bit later. That's not your sex, drugs, rock and roll kind of thing. But, people are always kind of searching to redefine themselves, right? In some way where they have meaning and relatedness. And I think that's what that program did.
Totally. Yeah. And then, my younger daughter watches reruns of Sex in the City.
Oh, wow.
17. So, I kept them from the TV for a period of years, and then, then they're teenagers and they're with their friends. And so, and these influences are all pervasive. And last night was a dance for the kids called Tolo. And so I went to take the pictures with all the moms at someone's house,
Yeah.
And I have to say, Robert, if my daughter listens to this, I'm sorry, I love you. But, the dresses, and my daughter's, she's beautiful. And it was a red, like shirred, super tight dress. And, I wore like super tight dress if I was, going to go out, of course, and she looked fabulous, but I couldn't help in my mind the dresses, the colors were either black or red.
Power colors. They're power colors, right?
They're power colors. And I just I kept thinking of the Scarlet Woman in the back.
Scarlet Woman, I know.
Oh my God.
What happens.
Oh my God.
That's what happens when you take the red pill. You just can't not look at things the same way anymore. Right?
It's true. I know. And so anyway, these are great kids, and they're having a good time, and the girls all had their makeup done and whatever. And they didn't look like $2 whores or anything like that, but they, maybe more expensive ones. I don't know, but I mean, beautiful young girls, but at the same time, you're just like, oh God, it's so, it's this whole sex programming.
I mean, these kids, you have their hormones turned on.
And
they're getting rewired, and of course they're just there to, help them get rewired.
Yeah, so they call having sex, by the way, they call it hooking up. I'm like, wait a minute, I hooked up with my friend Sarah for a cup of tea the other day. What do you mean, what? What are you talking about? So anyway, I don't know, back to weaving this back.
I have a question. I want to explore this a little bit further.
Okay.
So did the girls go to the dance by themselves, or did they have dates?
They had dates. They all had dates, but not necessarily guys they were dating, because this is a big friend group. So it was
okay.
Yeah.
Does your daughter date?
Actually, no. And my older daughter didn't have a boyfriend in high school, because this is a small school.
Right. I tend to think, my son is, I think he's 14, and my sense is that there isn't a lot of date, and I mean, not really that they have to date at 14, but I remember being in middle school. And, people were, you want to go steady, you want to go out. I mean, it was kind of a big thing.
Yeah.
And I just didn't see that. I haven't seen that in his generation. I was just curious about your daughter and her generation, or, well, the same generation, but her experience.
They tend to, quote unquote, hook up. And then others will come together, and then, they're a pair.
They're a pair. Okay.
Yeah. But it is definitely different than, when we were younger.
So what happens when the mom, the random mom or dad asks you, so Shana, what do you do for a living?
I tell them I'm a therapist.
Yeah.
I say I'm a therapist, and I work one-on-one, and then I do private retreats as well. And there's only, it was funny because last night I ended up doing a kind of session for one of the moms there, and she's also an outlier, and she's dynamite. I really like her. Oh, cool. And she'd love to come for a retreat.
There you go. Cool. That's cool. That's really cool. So you live in Washington State.
Yeah.
Not far from Seattle, where there are some very interesting and nefarious people hanging out.
Oh, yeah.
Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and quite a few more of that mayor that they kicked out of town not long ago. And you are, I would have to say, decidedly un-Seattle in terms of your political consciousness and awareness, because you want to get to the truth. And as we've seen, fairly often over the course of the last decade and even more, politics has very little to do with the truth. Has everything to do with obfuscation and denial and horrible things like extortion. But there are certain groups now that are split and aligned. And clearly Seattle is a very progressive city. How do you manage that, living amongst what would we call a kind of an island of progressives in the land of Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos? How does that work for you?
Well, I don't get involved.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is a show. Shakespeare said all the world's a stage and every man and woman a player on it. Mm-hmm. And we're being played
right
on every level at every turn. And so it's just not my lifestyle, Robert. I can't vote because I'm Canadian, but even if I could vote, I wouldn't, because I don't consent to being governed.
Right.
And plus, I don't recognize the system as legitimate, because it's not legitimate. It's
right. Yeah.
So we used to be a republic. Now we have a de facto government. And then in terms of, progressive, liberal, conservative, those are spell words. They're just spell words. And then everyone, again, wants to be in the tribe, so they identify what they identify Absolutely. With, and they take the banner. And I just, I don't do that. Again, like I'm also a seer, you know, I have eyes to see. And so I can see the play. And also, you know, I prefer to put my energies, first of all, into the work I do with my clients, but then my own interests of, you know, farming, which I don't do yet, but I will be, you know, so let me learn everything I can about that and what is off-grid living. And how very interesting that this quote unquote government that we have loves to talk about environmentalism and all this stuff. But so then if people go, okay, great, cool, I'll get off quote unquote fossil fuels, whatever those are.
Right.
And you know, get off the grid. And then it's like, oh, no, you can't do that. No, we're going to
right. Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I won't put a strain on the system. I'll collect barrels of rainwater. Oh, no, you won't. Right.
Well, yeah. And when are people going to catch a clue? I mean, we're in a tyranny. And
I think we're waking up.
Yes.
We're waking up. Here's the trick, though. As we wake up, are there going to be gatekeepers and shepherds who are just going to move us along into another kind of free-range pen? You know, I mean, that's where I think we are. And it's really important for people to go through the process, but to also understand that I'd say 95% of the people out there that are speaking along these lines are probably gatekeepers, intentional or unintentional. You know?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So you have to figure that one out pretty quickly.
Well,
or you just get moved into the next pen.
Well, I'm all about the individual also. I'm actually, you know, as much as I like community and tribe, we've been, you know, so splintered, and this has gone way back. And I think it's really important for the, you know, the individual to do their own work.
Absolutely.
And also, you know, one of the lines from one of the poetic messages that I wrote down was, one by one becomes most all. And so what I think we need to do is one by one extricate ourselves from the system. And that's not so cut and dry because, of course, it's so labyrinthine.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you have a pretty solid understanding around things like natural law. And we'll get into that maybe
down the road. Yeah.
Down the road. And because I think that's really worth talking about, especially as we go through Saturn and Capricorn. And we're really at this phase for the next 3 years, especially during this year with the first decan of Saturn and Capricorn, really having an opportunity to bring that energy into our lives, that we're not giving it away to the governments or the corporations, that we can begin to embody the Saturnian and Capricornian energy and to build step by step by step by step by step something that has merit and meaning for each of us individually, and then from ourselves, to our relationships, to our families, to our communities, and then upwards, because that's really how it works. It's, you know, the model is clear with yourself, get right with yourself, get aligned, and then boom, you find another person, right? And then the two of you can join your energy, you know, when two or more gathered in my name, right? Bigger, right. And then you start something else, and that something else is, and if everybody does that, what do we have? We have strong communities, really strong communities.
That's right.
And then we have strong cities, and then we have strong states, and then we have theoretical. It's not about the top. It's like, you know, the singular atom. It begins with that singular atom.
Right. Yeah. Because we're all holding that capstone in place at the
That's
top
right.
of the pyramid.
Absolutely.
So everyone down here starts to catch a clue and says, you know, we're not going to support this anymore.
Hey, before we jump off here, I wanted to see if we can just dive into this Me Too thing for a few minutes.
Okay.
Maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And just, you know, and probably 10 or 15 minutes won't be able to do complete service. But it was very interesting when this happened, because the first person that came up was Harvey Weinstein. I mean, he was the first guy that literally was sacrificed at the altar of Me Too.
That was no accident.
No accident at all. He was a whale, right? They got a whale, literally and figuratively. Have you seen pictures of Harvey Weinstein lately, by the way? Yeah. He looks horrible. He's
a pig.
He looks he's gotten super fat.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a video of him getting slapped in a restaurant in Phoenix. Have you seen it?
No.
it's either Phoenix or Scottsdale or somewhere. It's a city in Arizona. Anyway, he's there with his, I don't know, lawyer, trainer, who knows what this guy is, fixer. And this guy sees him at a restaurant, and he gives him hell. And the guy next to him, he's not a bodyguard, clearly, because if the guy was a bodyguard, he would have dispatched this dude, but he didn't. And this guy starts yelling at Harvey Weinstein. He slaps him in the face. And Harvey Weinstein looks so pathetic. So pathetic. Before, as he's leaving the restaurant, as he gets slapped, it's just like, man, this guy's pathetic. Anyway, he was the sacrifice, and then we've had a number of these instances come up. And on the one hand, and I've had a number of clients who have actually gone through some very serious stuff. And it's something that needs to stop, period, in the story. I mean, let's just be real clear about this, right?
Yeah.
The difficult part is, the people coming in and doing this, by and large, well, they've mostly been violated too. It's a virus, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's this virus that just gets passed on, which a lot of people don't understand. So we just it has to stop. It just does. It's just a complete violation. But then there's another level that you and I were talking about before we hit the record button. And that's where there's a power exchange. And there clearly is a tacit, if unspoken, agreement between two people that's going to take place. And one person is trying to tap into the power of another person so that they can advance their career, get a role, all the stuff that's associated with it. Yep. And some of the Me Too's that have come out are really not that credible, because it leaves a real strong sort of, cookie trail that this was actually what was going on. And so what we have is something that's legitimate and needs to have some attention brought to it. And then we have this other thing, which seems to be politically expedient and is almost acting as if it's been weaponized and creating a great deal of mistrust now between men and women.
That's right.
So I just wanted to, tap into your experience as a practitioner, because I know you've had folks in your work that it's come up, and then also just get your broad social view on this thing.
Well, I must say, we're definitely, I think it's the whole sexual molestation and rape. It's in crisis, just among, I have a number of people I've worked with over the years who were molested as children.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that also includes men.
Yeah.
Men have been deeply damaged by that. And I don't hear, any men's voices in this Me Too movement. I think it's very, very important that these women speak up. But everything gets profaned in this culture. It just does. And so then you're going to have those people, opportunists, shall we say, I think, who are just kind of riding on this. And then my concern also is that it's just been open season on men for a while. And again, this is all media generated.
Right.
And so there will be those who will take it as, another weapon against, men, and to make men feel even worse than maybe some of them do, and our young boys who are developing. And so yeah. And at the same time, it's gotta stop. And I will say, I would really like to see the Podesta brothers be brought out, publicly, and see those guys tarred and feathered, and, the at the very highest levels,
right.
And women actually did speak up against Bill Clinton.
Yeah, they did.
And Hillary was disgusting to those women and did everything she could to, smear them and get them.
She went on the offensive.
Completely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, that's interesting. That was pre-Me Too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
Well, one wonders what would have happened if the whole Clinton experience took place during the age of the internet. I mean, they wouldn't have survived a year, 2 years max, right?
No.
No.
No. And so anyway, so in terms of, Me Too, yeah, that's important. I mean, I was, when I was waiting tables in New York a million years ago, I was working at this restaurant on the Upper East Side. It was a nightmare of a place. And one of the busboys who was, he was a runner. He would run the food. He was Moroccan. And we went downstairs because I had to get like a cake or something. I had to go in one of the walk-in freezers, and he threw me up against a wall, and tried to sexually attack me. And I kicked him away, and I used an expletive. And is that the right word? And then he started yelling at me for swearing at him. Meanwhile, he was attacking me. Anyway, so I mean, so many, have some kind of story of, this kind of thing.
Right. And so that's really interesting, because if you know anything about Morocco and boys and that culture, probably a pretty good chance that he was sodomized.
Oh yeah.
Boy. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. And again, that's a virus. That's an absolute virus that's passed on. And so the virus has its own intelligence, and it takes over the individual. And its goal is to replicate, right? That's what it is. I mean, I'm sure you've seen this in your deep shamanic work at a viral level, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And the thing too to remember is this is worldwide. It's not like it's just in this country, Yeah. But also I have to say the quote unquote rape culture, personally, I don't quite get. I think we have deep viral piece here with incest and with child molestation in particular. That's deep. Yep. Like I'm horrified at how common it is, so I don't necessarily trust the media, put it that way, to bring actual healing to this. I see it, as you were saying, this is becoming a very, very divisive.
Yeah, absolutely. And also to your point, I mean, look, I'm in this time, this lifetime, in this body, I'm a white, sort of middle class, older male.
Yeah.
I've been on the planet 57 years, and I've seen a lot, and I can clearly say without a shadow of a doubt that there is an agenda. There is a head out for the white male in this country and in the world, and specifically older white males, because they represent some kind of label, whether it's racist or homophobic or hateful. And it's been incredibly divisive. And it's not just older, I mean, it's men in general, right? I mean, there's a real, because at some point, the poster child for all this stuff, which would be theoretically men like me and somewhat younger, if there's an eradication process, we'll go away on some level. And then whoever's left standing, well, they're going to be next on the hit list.
That's right. Oh, yes. You're the new witch.
Yeah.
That's all.
Absolutely. So then it's just going to continue to trickle down until finally, and in fact, it's even there already. I mean, you can go into college campuses and there are people who are saying men are the problem. Men, period, in the story. And once we get rid of men, the world will be a better place.
But think of, that is such an infantilized way to think, because it takes away all personal responsibility from the individual. And this is also something that has become such a permissive and promiscuous culture that we're in, that has been, seeded since whenever, the media working its black magic on people through the movies and television and stuff. But, there's no this is something I really see, like there's no discussion of personal responsibility, and people get very offended. And because also I see this in the ayahuasca community, and, you know, I have worked with people who've been raped by shamans, you know, in Peru and what, well, quote unquote shamans. It's big business for these guys. And, you know, they're very poor over there and they see an opportunity. And my goodness, the stories are just so appalling. And again, you know, it's like you've got to teach people, do your due diligence, be very careful. You know, you can't trust, you know, just anybody. And yes, the way you dress can be an invitation, you know, to a lot of trouble. You know, there's just sort of basic, I think, ways that, you know, we need to like raise our children and as a society embrace, you know, for our own health. And also I think of the virtues and even Aesop's fables, you know, I'll listen to those every so often. You can go on YouTube and it's not a computer voice, actually a living woman's voice who reads Aesop's fables. But there's essentially a maxim, which is a principle or an axiom of each story. And I'm like, my God, this is how people used to be raised, with that in mind. Right. And that was kind of, you know, a user's manual for navigating life. Yeah. And there's we're not getting that anymore. It's the Aleister Crowley, do as thou wilt. And he was an absolute, you know, just deplorable mess. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and then also that golden rule. I mean, you know, this stuff is quite simple. You treat others as you yourself would be treated. Right. The problem is that the manual for living, and the maxims for living, or however you want to describe them, you're right. They're just not there. So they're going to pick up what the popular culture and what the consensus reality agrees upon. And then rinse, repeat, repeat. And that brings us back to early on in the topic of conversation about fitting in with the group, about fitting in with the tribe, and then finding your identity apart from your home culture or whatever that is. So, you know, it's a vicious cycle. And most people aren't aware of the fact that they just get indoctrinated into this stuff. That's right. And the challenge is that it changes, right? Like the consensus rules for, you know, what's right, what's proper. I mean, you go back to 2000 versus 2012. It's different. 2018, it's different. And 10 years from now, it'll be different again. Yeah. So we're talking about things that are really, really mutable and have nothing to do with immutable truths, immutable love, that never change, that are the anchors and the pillars in our lives that we can wrap our arms around. Yes. You know, these are all just subjective morality, and it's always changing. They're just moving the slide rule all the time. That's right. And in the back of Bouvier's law dictionary, where you will find the maxims of law, it says that their definition of a maxim is a principle of truth that is consonant with logic and reason, in that it's true today as it was 4,000 years ago. Right. You know? These are just basic truths. Right. And Carl Jung spoke of the essential need to individuate. You know, as a young person, that was the purpose of initiation for our young boys and our girls. When they were ready, you initiate them into, you know, adulthood in whatever form it was for the tribe. And so they've got to individuate. And, you know, this is why I'm all about the individual, because people have got to start to enter that individuation process away from the gang. And there have been plenty of smart people over over time. Mark Twain, one of them, and I can't think of the exact quote he said, but I'll find it, about how, you know, if you're with the consensus, you know, you need to rethink that position. Right. You know, like, it was just understood. And what I say is the collective is always misguided. You can bank on it. Yeah, absolutely. Because it's groupthink. Yes. And we're not going to get into groupthink because we'll be here for a couple of hours. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the challenge. And it is certainly the challenge for young people like your daughters and my son. You know, back in the 70s, even though it was clearly engineered, there was a real demarcation between like straight culture and conservative culture, and then kind of rock and roll and rebellion. It was almost like, you know, here's your default. It's preset. You get into it.
Right.
And it takes you down a certain path. And that path can be, you know, interesting, mildly interesting, or it could be just mundane. I mean, that path led me into a place where I was exploring psychedelic drugs and spirituality and magic and, you know, all the stuff that was behind the music. And then out of that, I extracted something else, you know, because we can't always live like that. You know, we can't be Dionysus forever.
Right.
Because we'll be ripped to shreds. I mean, that's his fate. Mm-hmm. So at some point you have to extract what you can and then transmute the Dionysian. I mean, I'm talking about men, right? Women may have their own version of this, but
they do.
But yeah. So for men, it's about the transmutation, at least from our culture, from the Dionysian to the Apollonian, because we were all raised to be Apollonian up to one certain point. And then the Dionysian culture kicked in during the 1960s. And so that was a path, and it led into the left-hand path. Mm-hmm. And that's okay if you can transmute that. Because now, in terms of your model, it's individuation. You have the Dionysian for men, which is the dark feminine. And then you have the Apollonian, which is about achievement and accomplishment and doing things in the light of the day. And that's what happened when the 60s came along and ended. A lot of the people from the 60s on the political side, they totally went Apollonian. You just didn't know about it. Jerry Rubin went Apollonian, Abby Hoffman to some degree. But you look at, I mean, and even people like Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground, what did they do? They went legit. They got jobs at colleges and started teaching, so they did it. Yeah. You know, I mean, I'm not, you know, on their team. There are examples of it. You know, so anyway, tell us what the female version of this is, and then we'll kind of wrap this up and look forward to seeing you again in about 30 days.
Oh, well, I just, you know, and not all women, of course. I'm not speaking for all women, of course, but just that I was just, you know, anyway, I was sort of speaking more for myself and other women who have explored that, well, I think a lot of women are, you know, exploring the whole Dionysian temple of sex, death, and rock and roll. And, you know, it seems to be a passage for, you know, for women as well. And who want to break out of maybe the mold of, you know, be a nice girl, be a good girl, you know, or whatever that is.
Persephone, like going to the underworld.
Yeah.
And being the consort, the lord of the underworld. Isn't that part of that psychic experience? Yeah. The bad boy and all, you know. I mean, because I remember when you connected me up with Carrie Otis and I interviewed her, and we got into her relationship with Mickey Rourke.
Yeah.
Not just Mickey Rourke, but other people in her life, which were sort of this gateway to this journey of Persephone. And then she actually comes out of that by facing like potentially her own mortality by being with somebody who could literally kill her.
Right.
And then there comes the individuation after that. And what happens to her? She becomes a mother. She marries a guy who is not anything like she's ever been with before. He's solid, business guy. Yeah. And she's a mother.
Yeah. But that was an underworld journey.
Exactly.
And she survived it, and she's better for it. And I have my own version of that as well. You know, like I know a number of women who have, and that, you know, that's a dark well. But I'll tell you, if you can survive it, that dark well serves. It serves. That's where, you know, tremendous resources can be found, because you have to cull from parts of yourself that you didn't even know were there. Yeah. I'm not encouraging that at all, but, you know, it just happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even sure that, you know, we're at a place where men have to go through this Dionysian rites. I think at one point in time, it was in the culture, you know, we had to have, you know, kind of this reset in some ways. Mm-hmm. But, you know, I've been spending a lot of time researching like the life and death of Michael Hutchence, who was the lead singer of NXS. Even that name, NXS, right?
Yeah.
And he has a very strange end to his life, and but he's a Dionysian figure. And I was looking at his life and looking at my life. I'm like, wow, there's an end to this. And it almost feels like even with Hutchins, he might have been. Kurt Cobain died before him. Kurt Cobain died in the early '90s. So Hutchins is kind of like the end of maybe this Dionysian cycle. You look around in music today, you really don't see that. You don't see that kind of figure anymore.
No, you don't.
Fronting a rock band, it just doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So we're probably out of that cycle, and whatever initiation young men, need to go through now doesn't really include that to some extent. That's my sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think you're right.
So what about women? Do women have to go to the underworld now? Do they have to have the devil as a consort and escape with their lives and go to the light? Is that still part of the program?
Well, it seems to be happening for some of them. I mean, I must say, even to just sort of bring back the sort of ayahuasca thing, and that's a beautiful medicine and very powerful and has helped a lot of people. But there are a lot of women in those circles who are, being taken advantage of and, falling under the spell
right.
of certain brujos. And in this sort of anything goes sexuality, there's just great danger, for women,
Yeah.
I mean, really, and the drugs and all the design. I don't know why they call them designer drugs, but whatever. There's a lot of danger out there.
Yeah.
In that regard,
Yep.
So yeah. I mean, I really I just shake my head when I look at the state of affairs because it doesn't have to be this way. And I really do see the media as weaponized.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's all pervasive. It's at the airport. It's at the shopping mall. It's like everywhere plus everyone's walking around with those iPhone things, in their face.
Right. Yep. We live in a complete 24/7 immersion tank.
Right, and it's not real.
Of sensory programming all the time.
Right. But it's programming. We'll talk about reality at another time, but it's not nature. That's real. You, me, we're real. This, and the cycles of nature. That's what I follow, and nature is my teacher. I don't give a shit. Excuse me. What's in the Huffington Post or, what the New York Times has to say. I don't care. I'm not interested.
I'm just going to throw this out there. Maybe we can talk about this next time.
Okay.
But it'd be really interesting to track the rise of what we would call synthetic reality. Synthetic reality meaning that we're going to change the definition of things. We're going to change, it'd be really interesting to track that with the inception of genetically modified organisms. Because once we began to tamper with genetically modified organisms, we were tampering with like this codex of what we would call reality in your vision or version, nature. Mm-hmm. So once that took place, I'd be really interested to see like what was happening culturally. And I know roughly when the first genetically modified plant, it was a Nalgene, it was a tomato. Anyway, it'd be interesting. Maybe we do that next time and just kind of track where our culture becomes even more modified. Mm-hmm. Because now we're modifying the stuff of nature. And it's open season. And whether it's open season because the social engineers said, hey, we're God now, and we can transform everything. We can turn a tomato into a cod. If we can do that, then we can do anything with the culture. We can tell you what the sex of your child is, and maybe it's a male or female, and you won't know, and we don't care.
Yeah.
Or maybe the gateway is just kind of open simultaneously. It'd be interesting to explore that. So let's put that on the shelf for next time.
Okay, that's a good one.
All right. Okay. Well, this has been great, Shana.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. And we could talk for hours, as we know.
Yeah, so next time you come on, and we kind of just put this together because both you and I are really busy and we're squeezing in some time here. But the next time you come on, see if you can bring us like one solid, tangible thing that people can do that will contribute to the value of their lives. We call them solutions.
Yeah.
So next time, instead of dissecting, maybe we can actually give people the tool that they can take away with.
Yeah, well, this is a good start. And then, we'll follow.
Yeah, it's good to unpack and get a sense of who you are. I know a lot of people know you. It's not like you're just coming off the streets, but it's good in this context for people that don't know you.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, thanks, Robert. I'd love to discuss solutions.
All right, it's been a gas, and have a great day, and we'll see you next month.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, bye, Shana.
Bye.
Well, that was a spirited discussion. Hello, are we on? Yeah. That was a very spirited discussion with Shonagh Home, and I hope you enjoyed that. And there's a lot there, wasn't it? There's a lot in there. And I got a little chat message from Steve Crimmy, who said that he's really enjoying this conversation, and I hope you did too. So we'll have her back again in a month. It'll be a shorter version. I just wanted to give you a sense of Shonagh, even though I listened to it and I thought, man, I'm talking too much. I need to let her talk more. It's very instructive to go back and listen to these interviews, but I was excited about the level and connection of the conversation. Let's put it that way. So she'll be back in a month, and it'll be a shorter version, and we'll tap her brain trust because she's a very practical person when it comes to actually coming up with things that will add quality and value to your life. So keep your ears open and eyes open for that interview, which will happen about a month from today. All right, so why don't we pack it in? Busy day ahead for yours truly, and I'm sure everybody else out there under this Saturn and Capricorn energy has a lot to do. Whatever that do is, go do it. Go do it. Carpe diem. All right, use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stable when it's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to 15 Minutes of Flame. Again, I'd like to thank my guest, Shonagh Home. And by the way, you can find Shana at shonagh.com. That's SHONAGH, home, HOME, SHONAGH, shonagh.com. Check her out. You can find out all about her work and her books and all that stuff. All right. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to step when it's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'll see you all tomorrow. And Emily Moyer tomorrow, talking about Jerry Nasser and the gymnastics, the dark underbelly of gymnastics, and what might actually be behind this next wave of really legislative momentum and energy and how do we say this, fusion of what's going on and the governmental controls that are about to be unleashed. And we're going to see if this iteration of what's happened with the gymnasts are part of a bigger program. It's a very sensitive subject, and I can't think of anybody better to talk about it with than Emily Moyer. Okay, so join us tomorrow.